Hello, and welcome back to another episode of In the Kitchen with Win, where I have candid conversations with other food founders about their journey. Today, our guest is Christine Keller, founder of Moodify Foods. Hi, Christine. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Wen. Thank you for having me.
So, Christine, can you tell our listeners a little bit about your business?
Yeah. We are a women-owned company that makes all-natural instant oatmeal with ingredients to boost your mood.
Awesome. And I did read up on your product, and it's really focused on ingredients that improve your mood. Was there a personal reason why you gravitated toward a mood boosting food product or
Yeah. It's a very personal reason. And, let's face it, most of us have really struggled with mental health at some point in our lives.
right?
And honestly, over the last few years, I think that has increased for many of us. And I was watching and witnessing struggles, having my own struggles,
Hmm.
and was really deeply moved and had the question for myself, like, how can I help this? I'm not a licensed psychiatrist, and I wasn't going to go back to school to start doing that, but I really wanted to help. So
Hmm.
I reached into, what my background is, which is food, and what I do know, and I don't think is widely known yet, but there are many ingredients and things that we can eat and in our diet that really help improve our brain function and our mood. So I thought, well, since I have a background in that, why don't I start thinking about it? And that's what we did. And this is, really about the science of nutritional psychology.
Hmm.
So when I leaned back on my history there, and I thought, okay, well, let's do that. Let's figure out some foods that we can put together that can help people really start, improving their mental health and their brain.
I agree with you, and that's part of my healing journey too, is learning the impact of food on your mental health. For me, I really struggled for a long time with anxiety, and just
Mm-hmm.
changing my diet and eating foods that are anti-inflammatory really help reset like my hormones and all those things. So I totally can
Yeah.
relate to that. Can you tell me
Yeah.
about a few of the ingredients and what are their functions?
Yeah, so there's the whole idea of natural food and combinations, and they can all have different impacts. And I first want to say, I'm glad that you are definitely one of the people who thinks about their diet as a part of mental health. And we absolutely know that there are many things that we can do to impact our mental health, and eating is just one of them, right? And
Mhm.
so, we
Right,
don't proclaim that you eat these foods in combination and all of a sudden, oh, I'm happy. Like, there are a
right.
lot of things that layer in there to a better positive mental health, and intention is one of them. There's
Mhm.
medications, there's therapy, there's all sorts of things to do. So
Right.
so food is one of the really important things, and a simple thing to change in your lifestyle. Just start to think about it. But we have ingredients like probiotics.
Okay.
So we have a product called Gut Feeling, and that's cinnamon and apple with a hint of ginger. And ginger is
Mhm.
a very, very good mood boosting ingredient. And all of these combinations together, the oats, the prebiotics, and the ginger, and this product triggers your serotonin in the
Mhm.
gut and promotes feelings of well-being. We have another product called Gone Bananas. We love our little product names too. They
I
kind of
love
crack
the
me up.
name. Yeah.
I know. Um, this one has the oats, of course, which
Hmm.
help with the fibers in your gut and dietary system, and then bananas and nuts. And this one calms the brain down. So we have just different things like that we're playing with, and we really, really love our combination. One of my favorites is a little buzz. Again, another funny name that we have.
Huh.
And this one actually includes chocolate, which we know is great for our mood.
Mhm.
Cocoa nibs, again, that
Mhm.
chocolate and the cocoa. And then we've added coffee to this one.
Okay.
And this sort of increases energy levels and motivation.
That's awesome. And what made you decide to go with oatmeal instead of, I've seen a lot of bars out there, oat
Mm-hmm.
bars, and what made you go with oatmeal?
Well, one of the intentions, well, there's a couple reasons for that. One was, the ingredients that can be in oatmeal, those combinations, they live together very well and can easily be combined into a morning staple. But the bigger one is not only are we providing a product, we wanted to provide kind of a feeling and a mood. And the best time to start thinking about your mental health is first thing in the morning. Right. So oatmeal just seemed to be a natural fit for us. We also have the trademark to launch bars and snacks and teas and all of these other things, which we want to get to at some point. But as we're a baby company, we said, let's start out with, a good breakfast staple, and oatmeal seemed to be the one. And I also think that oatmeal is the category itself right now. We have a lot of old players that the products add a lot of sugar to them, and we don't add sugar to ours. So we thought, okay, we can see improvement in the way that we come at oatmeal by providing big pieces of fruit and nuts, and then also not adding sugar and really thinking about texture and just making it something unique and different.
I love that. And I love oatmeal, but I agree. A lot of places when you get oatmeal, it's something that's so healthy, but then they pack in a tons of brown sugar. And if you remove that, then it's healthy.
Yeah.
So,
We had a buyer say to us when we were presenting, after we told him all about the product, he said, and he tried it, he said, I used to eat oatmeal every day, and then I realized how much sugar was in the brands that I was eating, and I stopped eating them. And he said, this oatmeal will actually bring me back to eating oatmeal again.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's awesome. That's powerful.
It was super powerful. And coming from a buyer who is looking at every product under the sun, that really made us feel great.
Right. I know. I love getting messages like that from buyers. It's like, oh, okay, my message is getting across. Because sometimes you don't know if the message that you want to get out there is coming across, on a health aspect. So that's huge.
Yeah.
And so, Christine, tell me a little bit about what has surprised you about the CPG industry so far.
Oh my gosh. Well, I've been in the CP industry for many years, and I like to admit, working on developing brands and products. So I know it pretty well. There are always things that surprise me, and I think it's constantly a learning experience, and not a lot about the consumer. I think I know how to kind of tap into the consumer need and really understand what they want. But when you're running your own business, as you know, all of a sudden there's logistics that you have to deal with, and you have to deal with, the retailers and the time that it takes for them to make decisions, and the way that they're buying now is very different than they were before. So I think, just like any business that is, started from the beginning and then kind of growing, you have to be flexible and really listen and just look at all the signals. I don't think that that's particular to the CPG industry, but I think for me, as I'm doing it for myself now for the very first time, I'm noticing that as well as I know the industry, I don't know a lot of the details that it takes to have a whole company and have to really be thinking about every single one of them.
Right. I can see that. I would say I have such an appreciation for just food products, especially from locals or small businesses like ours. Every time I go to a grocery store and I see a small brand or a local brand, it like no one understands how hard it takes to get on that shelf and to sit on that shelf. And sometimes the expenses that comes with landing on that shelf. So
yeah,
I mean, such a different appreciation for it.
I do too. And because of that, I always try and buy small brands, and I'm very interested in trying new things. Like when I saw your sauces on the shelf, I was immediately grabbing them and tasting them, because I do think that, small companies, they have challenges, but they really think hard about every little thing that they're doing, and they have to work extra hard. So the food is usually better in some way.
I agree. I would say it's usually better. It's higher quality ingredients, and there's a lot of pride that comes with it because it's such a personal connection. And it's usually, I would say, from all the founders I've spoken to, it usually comes from uh, some like resolving your own issues or trying to improve yourself in one way or the other. And from that, the idea comes about how to on a product. Like for me, I always say like I've always loved business. I've been in different types of industries, but I feel like this business found me, and it was just me doing something for myself to resolve a problem that I couldn't
Hmm.
find on the grocery store. So that's
Right,
why I
right.
love emerging brands and local brands. It's usually the case.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, I had a little bit of a different twist on that. Is, my husband said to me one day, you've been building brands and products for companies your whole career. Why not do it for yourself? And that was a hard question to answer. And when I finally answered it, I said, it's because I don't have the right idea
Mhm.
until I did. And this is the idea that for me landed and resonated in my heart, and
Mhm.
that I felt like I could really attach myself to, and all of the hard work that it takes to do that. So that was sort of my kind of shake or shift there.
Yeah, and you have to love it. I tell everyone you have to really love it with all your heart because it's such a marathon.
It is. It is. It is, and it teeters every day, as you know.
It
You
does
kind
teeter
of are
every
like,
day. The emotions teeter every day sometimes. Um,
yes.
so tell me what would you say so when did you launch your company?
We launched the company in November 2020, or we incorporated the company in
Mhm.
November 19, sorry. And then we launched, no, back up, sorry, I'm confusing myself. November, because the last 2 years have been a blur for everyone, I think.
Right, I
Um,
agree. There's a lot
so
of starts and stops and a lot of
yeah,
things that has to happen before you actually get to the product piece.
exactly. The product itself launched 2021 in August,
What
but we incorporated the business in November 2020. So it took us about a year to get there.
Yeah, and I think that's important for food founders to know because it's a long lead. Same thing I incorporated in, I think back in 2018 just for fun.
Uh-huh.
Like I did a fictitious business statement just for fun. And then,
Mm,
from the time that it took really 3 years of research until I got an actual product I can market.
yeah.
So it doesn't just happen overnight. And a lot of times people don't see all of the things that you do leading up to that moment where you have a product on the shelf.
Yeah, yeah. So many important decisions are made during that kind of beginning phase. What does it taste like? What does it look like? How much
Mhm.
does it cost? All of those things. Where are you going to make it? How are you going to make it? There's so much work that goes into that. But when it finally launches, it might not even be right. And that was one of the
Yeah.
things that we considered when we launched in August was, wait, maybe this isn't right. So we did it in sort of a small way
Yeah.
to really understand what did people like and what was working, what wasn't working, what mistakes did we make, how can we fix them when we get bigger.
Right. Right. So what would you say your biggest challenge you face so far?
Mentally or from a business standpoint, because they're two very different challenges. Um,
I can relate with you there.
yeah, so let's attach to mentally first. Biggest challenge mentally, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, is fear.
Yeah.
It's really about the fear of not doing it right or not making
Right.
it work, or the fear of talking to someone. I mean, that's for me, that is the biggest thing. Like, how do I overcome the fear that I have that it's not going to be well received?
Yeah.
Um, and the only way you can do that is to try and see and scare yourself a little. So I scare myself every day.
I love that you said that. I think you're the first founder that I've interviewed that said that usually it's more logistic related or whatnot, but I think at the end of the day, fear, the mental aspect, it is the biggest aspect because I agree with you. I struggle with fear in probably all the careers, all the industry, and just the fear of failure. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I've always been pretty like I'm pretty risky. Like I just go for things even when I don't know what I'm doing. But I
Mm-hmm.
tell people all the time, I have so much fear, but I do it anyway.
Yeah.
And sometimes you fumble through it, sometimes you can calm it down and get through it and feel
Mm-hmm.
good. But I would say that's my biggest challenge as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, because the business challenge is there's an answer, right? I mean, you can call someone you might know, or someone might know someone. If you don't know, so you can do what we all do is fumble through until you get the right answer.
Yeah.
So I think you can solve business challenges. There's usually a solution to it. And even if that's shutting your doors, like that's a business solution. But the mental capacity that it takes to actually, step out there and expose yourself to all of these people eating something that came from, your brain and your hard work is
Yeah.
you have to really be hard. And I love talking to you every time, because you often you show the fearlessness to me, and that's inspiring for me.
Oh, thank you. But I tell people I just do everything with fear.
I know, right? Me too. Me too. That's how you get there. But the thing is, you can't, even though the fear is there, you can't be like, I hold my breath often when I'm afraid, just for a second before I push the button or do the
Yeah.
thing. And
Yeah.
and that keeps me growing. It's challenging, and that makes me learn. So I'm going to keep
Right.
on.
Right. And I think it's fascinating because we have new fears every single day. But when, especially around this time of the year, I always take time to reflect, or I get really nostalgic, or looking back on numbers and reports
Hmm.
I sent out or emails I sent out, like the past year or maybe even further back, because
Mm,
I had so many starts and stops. But I look back and saw all the things I did, even
mm,
though I was so scared, and the progress. So I always tell people, even if it's a small win, anything that makes you feel good or confident about your business, I celebrate it, because we do so many things in fear, and once we get something go right, or like one yes, it's like, yay.
yeah, that,
That's
that
the only
that's
way you can
such
keep
great advice.
going.
Yeah, yeah. I recently had a moment like that, and I'm glad you brought that up, because, like you said, each day you're just looking for the next thing, and you're working harder and harder and harder, and you've always got your sights on something new to grow. But when you look back, I happened to be cleaning my office and went back through some old notebooks,
Mhm.
and I was like, wow, like,
Right.
look at what we've done in this first year of our business, and gave myself a really well needed pat on the back, because only I can do that for myself.
Yeah.
Other people can say you're doing great, and you're like, oh, thank you, but you have to really internalize that.
Yes, I agree with that. And I think sometimes uh for me, I'm like my biggest critic, right? Like I'm
Yes,
the
of course.
hardest on myself. And it's always been an issue, not an issue, but it's always been something that I struggle with. And with this industry, it's such a long road that some days I'm just like, man, am I gonna see the light? Am I just
I
doing
know.
this for fun, or is this gonna turn into something? But I think just staying focused and just taking one thing at a time,
Hmm.
and making and just celebrating those moments. Like I
Yeah,
remember when I was so excited to get into 5 stores. And
yeah,
now I'm like so frustrated. I'm like, oh, it's taking so long. It's like, okay, well, you were excited about 5 stores. Now you have almost 100. So that's a big spread. So
yes,
um,
yes. That's
we
amazing.
have to remember that. Mhm.
Yeah, well, I'll keep reminding you, and you keep reminding me.
That sounds good. And build a community. I would say the community is huge, because I didn't know anyone that sold food products, or I didn't know
Mhm,
anything about, I didn't even know what CPG was or a grocery buyer was. So I kind of had to learn all this stuff on the fly. And once you learn all those things and meet other people who go through the same emotions, even though
mhm.
they seem like they're maybe further ahead, it really helped me for sure.
Oh, it does. And I have to say that the food community, especially the
Mhm.
smaller companies, everyone's willing to help each other. And,
Right.
I'm willing to help anyone. And I know so many people who are willing to help me. And that's how we grow. And we
Yeah.
need each other. It's like a little mycelium underneath, our kindness toward each other. And I see that in every company that I hit. Well, most companies that I hit anyway.
Yeah, me too. And I think it comes down to it. We're all just passionate people, and we're passionate about food, and we're all
Hmm.
foodies. And
Yeah.
there's a different thing about people who are passionate about foods. We're really passionate. Like
I
we love
agree.
to eat.
It's true. It is true. And share a meal. That's another
Yes.
one thing that I love is to just share things, food.
Yeah,
Great.
I love getting together to eat or cooking for people and just sharing recipes and ideas and new food products. So I totally get it. Um, in your opinion, what would you say is the most important skill that a food founder has to have?
Well, I think I just identified one is
Mhm.
fear, right? Like
Right.
overcoming your fears and staying steady through that.
Hmm.
Um, I think staying steady is a really important quality, and being able to see everything that needs to happen, but let other people do what they do. It's when it's your business, as you know, it's if you're type A personality, it's really easy to want like just no one can do it like I can do it. I need to do
Hmm.
everything, but you can't, and you need to keep your brain focused on the four things that are most important, and expect and let other people do their job.
Right, right. I agree with that. I would say I have a hard time of letting go of things and but in this business you have to let go. Like you're just talking about trucking, delivering your product where I'm in a whole nother state. It's like for me, naturally, I want to be there receiving the product and but
Mm-hmm.
it's impossible. And as you scale, it's gonna get even harder to control and physically be there for all of those things.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think I would also say, for other founders, like just keeping a real check on the reason why you're doing this,
Mhm.
um, and to be sure that it's authentic
Yeah,
to the idea and to what you're doing, because so many things can derail you from the original idea and goal.
I agree. I agree. Um, I think I think there's so much information out there too. Like for example, you go on LinkedIn and everyone's doing something else, or another brand is, start with oatmeal, but they're branching into different products. And I think that sometimes when we see other brands are
Mm.
somewhat similar doing other things, we get like antsy, like, oh my gosh, like maybe I do need 3 or 4 more SKUs, or I need another SKU. And so sometimes I tend to start thinking about too many things instead of focusing on the priority at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, as you know, when you're a small company, there's so many things you can do, and if you try to do them all, you'll do none.
Right.
So, I really try to I have four things that need to be done over the next 6 months, and everything else is gravy on top of that. But those
Right.
four things I need to make sure that I do really, really well, or that our company does really well.
Right. Right. So what would you say your big goal for your business next year is for 2023?
2023 is about expansion and I mean, we have proof of concept. We did that in our first year, but
Mhm.
now to really understand the data, that is there, and see, are we selling? Do consumers want us? Where are our best channels? Um,
Mhm.
how should we continue to expand the business? Because, there are some success stories of companies that have gone from 0 to 100 in a matter of a year or two, right?
Right.
But what I need to think about, and what is most small companies need to think about, is how do I take the small steps to get
Mhm.
there? And
Mhm.
so for us, it's those small steps, and we have expanded distribution, which as we're starting, that's like the most important thing. We got to sell the thing,
Right.
and that's kind of what we're focusing on over the next year, is just getting as much distribution as we can in the right places.
Right. Right. And so it I agree, and I think that sometimes when I see other brands and they're getting into so many stores so fast, one thing that I try to keep reminding myself is grow steady and responsibly, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes if you hire a broker, or you talk to like a PR person and they want you to spend all this money and get all this exposure, but if you're spending all that money towards that big scale marketing, but on the supply chain side, you can't support it. It's going to be a disaster and a waste of money. So I always have to keep reminding myself, keep growing responsibly. Like I just got into Mothers, so just
Oh,
kind of
congratulations.
seeing how that works out, and that's like one of my larger chains for now, and kind of learning about promotions and what they're
Mm-hmm.
expecting. So I think growing responsibly and steadily so that you can kind of learn as you go too, instead of making one big, huge mistake and putting all your funds into one area.
Yeah.
That can be just a disaster for a small brand.
It absolutely can be. And I also think, making sure that you know what people think of your product
Mm-hmm.
is important, so that when you are ready to grow with the distribution and with the manufacturing and all of the supply chain and everything, that
Mm-hmm.
you know exactly what to say, and that you really keyed into who's buying your product and why they like it.
Right. And I think that takes practice too, because I
Mm-hmm.
definitely remember when I first started and I was like making like cold calls to buyers. I was like fumbling through the phone. So definitely a lot of practice. And even from my first pitch deck to this pitch deck, like the messages continue to get honed in. And the more I'm out there doing demos too and talking to buyers, talking to the staff at the store, talking to customers and getting their feedback and the way they see the product, it really helps with the messaging as well and honing in
Yeah.
on fine-tuning that. So
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. That feedback loop is so important
yeah.
to your growth, and then to developing, the right language and the right products, truthfully, as you grow.
Right. I mean, the language always seems simple, but it's so hard.
Yeah, that's true. It is hard. Cheers to all the writers in the world, right?
Right, right. And so, okay, so I think we'll wrap up our meeting, but I want to end our meeting with a fun little question. If you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be?
Wow. That's a good question. It's a big question, right? Because there's so many interesting, lovely people in the world, like, gosh, Aretha Franklin, if I could talk to Stevie Wonder, if I could talk to, any musician, Michelle Obama, like those are all people I would love to have dinner with and just learn and absorb their brilliance.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had to pick one, I probably would pick my father.
Oh,
He passed away in 2020. And if I could have dinner with him, I would ask so many questions that I thought I would have time to ask.
yeah.
Um, I, I would just, that would be great. And to just see him and touch him again and give him a big hug, but to really dig into those things that I always had questions about, but never got around to finding out the real answer.
Yeah.
Um, that's what I would pick if I could just pick one. But I would like to have dinner with a lot of other people too.
No, I love that. And it goes back to reminding all of us that our time on this earth is not guaranteed. And so sometimes, like going back to sometimes when I have a tough day in the office and I have to think about, okay, well, there's other jobs I can do, but if today is my last day, would I want to do something else or would I still want to be doing what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like knowing our mortality or that today could be our last day is a good way of thinking about things on tough days
Yeah,
for me.
on tough days or on good days,
Or on
like,
good days too. So,
yeah, just kind of capturing all that as much as you can and appreciating,
yeah,
appreciating the hard things too, because they teach us.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we grow and that's how we learn and things sometimes when things happen, there's a reason for it. Like if it didn't happen, we wouldn't have learned how to proceed or if a bigger problem comes, we wouldn't be able to handle it as well. So
Yeah, yeah, it's
problems is
true.
a good thing. Problems is a
Yep.
good
Oh, let's call them fertilizer, aka SHIT. They help us grow.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today, Christine. It's
Yeah,
always
thank
a
you.
pleasure, and I'm sure we'll be chatting again. But thank you for sharing your story with our listeners, and I'm
All right.
sure they're gonna love just all of your advice and hearing about your journey.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. This has been super fun.
Okay, thanks.